no matter, I think, the time that you have to prepare, there's still a sense of transition that we go through. And our American culture, this is a broad statement, doesn't really make a lot of space to process those transitions.
Marriott's on the move. What? Marriott's on the move. Again? Marriott's on the move.
Not anymore. I'm Mariette of Marriott's on the Move, and I'm finally setting roots back in Sweet Home Chicago. But if you're thinking about moving, I'm on it. I've moved 20 times in the last 24 years to 6 of America's top cities, and boy, do I have some stories for you. I'll be doing some on-air coaching and, of course, giving you my tips, tricks, and scams to avoid. This is the Moving Tips and Tricks podcast. Now let's get moving. Welcome to the Moving Tips and Tricks podcast, everyone. I am your host, Mariette Fry, and I am here today with a friend of mine. Her name is Saunders Moore. She is a highly skilled leadership coach with over 2 decades of experience, combining her expertise as an ICF-trained executive coach, licensed psychotherapist, and strategic advisor to help clients achieve personal and professional growth. Driven by values of connection, adventure, and empathy, Saunders tailors her approach to support individuals and organizations in developing communication skills, self-compassion, and embracing growth through challenges. With a diverse background in therapeutic approaches and executive coaching, Saunders focuses on individual and group development, incorporating psychology principles and a strengths-based approach to facilitate mindset shifts and transformational change. I need mindset shifts because I am tripping over my world. But she works with leaders to build confidence, raise self-awareness, and change thinking patterns to enhance team culture and bottom-line results. Saunders has extensive experience in coaching individual leaders, as well as facilitating group and team building programs within organizations, creating more effective and collaborative workplace environments. Having lived and worked in the USA, Ecuador, and Spain, she brings a wealth of cultural understanding and adaptability to her consulting practice. Holding a master's in counseling psychology and certified in various assessment tools such as Team Management Profile, Hogan Suite of Psychometrics, and mindfulness-based stress reduction, which we all need, Saunders offers comprehensive support to her clients. In addition to her work as a leadership coach, she maintains a private practice as a licensed psychotherapist, providing counseling services to individuals residing in California and North Carolina. So Saunders, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, all that to be said, Saunders is my friend, and we have a mutual friend from when I lived in San Francisco, and she's moved many, many times like me. She even lived in Asheville during the flood. So we have lots and lots to talk about when it comes to a lot of different areas. So tell us first where you grew up and like how this whole your moving journey started.
Yeah, I was born in New York City, and when I was about 9, my family relocated to the Boston area, the suburbs of Massachusetts. And both of my parents had moved for professional reasons from their hometowns to New York City, kind of to strike out. And I think that was a little bit in my nature and in the family system of being willing to uproot for opportunities, for change of experience. We also, I think because of that, because my parents also love adventure and travel, we were exposed to different places domestically and internationally growing up. So it was just part of the kind of family ethos of willingness to get out in the world and see what's happening.
So when was your first cross-country move?
So my first cross-country move came a couple years after college. I went to school in Virginia, so in a different part of the country than where I'd grown up. I had family down there. I lived abroad a bit, came back, was working in Washington, D.C., and it was the 2008 recession. And so with that, I took advantage of that opportunity to go explore something else and moved to California, to the San Francisco area, where then I met the friend who connected us, and it went from there. So it was a grand adventure. I drove cross country with 2 girlfriends, and we really made a an adventure of it, trying to stop in all of these landscapes, and it gave me such an appreciation for the diversity that's here. I think when you fly on a plane, it's a little bit different because you don't get to experience everything that you're passing through, and driving through it just really helped me appreciate the vastness of this country.
Yeah, it's funny. So Colleen is our mutual friend, and she is just one of those people, like she's a school teacher, like you just want to hug her and like hang out with her. She's just got such good energy and vibes all the time, you know? And when I moved to North Carolina, she's like, oh, my friend Saunders lives in Asheville. Like, we should meet up when I'm in town. And we ended up going on this amazing hike. Like, I mean, there were like snakes and like all kinds of crazy stuff, but we just had like such a wonderful day. I remember like thinking like, oh my gosh, there's like real live poisonous snakes that we could get bit by. But like you guys like, you know, hiked masterfully. I think I had like gym shoes on. I was like an unskilled hiker, but we spent the day together and then we've been friends since. So, you know, it's like those are the connections you make when you live all over the country. And I think that that's something to be said for like the adaptability that you get to kind of learn when you like have to make new friends in new places, you know?
Yeah. And I think there really is, having moved, and I think I experienced works to welcome in people who are also moving and in transition. And I remember meeting you and thinking like, oh, here's somebody else who has also made this migration from California to North Carolina, and I want to stay connected with her. So I think there's a willingness to create your tribe where you are.
Yeah. And I feel like once you meet those people that like have that same vibe as you and like you can talk for hours. I mean, like we'll get on the phone, Saunders and I will just start talking. And the next thing you know, we're like, oh my gosh, it's been like an hour and a half. And so we were like, I need to have you on the podcast. Like, you're so smart. And we have so many great conversations. I know. Well, and you moved twice in 1 year, like last year, like I did. So can we talk about that adventure a little bit? Well, was it 3 times? Because it was twice in Asheville and then once to California, right? Yeah.
Also named that I've been a renter for the past 5 years. So some of that has impacted my moving. When I first got to, last year, let's see, I think in January, we had some high waters in Asheville. And September of the same year, we had Hurricane Helene. So massive flooding and just a really trying time. You know, this is 8-9 months later, and a lot of parts were at that point as well. Back here to California, I found an outpost with friends and was kind of going back and forth. Having the reprieve of being able to turn on a faucet and take a warm shower, and then going back to Asheville and boiling hot water on the stove so that I could take a camp shower, as we called it. So there was a lot of moving for me in the past year. And I know you as well. I actually left my car at your house.
Yeah, that was such a crazy time because when I was moving, because of Hurricane Helene, they canceled my closing. So it was like such a crazy time. Like when you have a closing, they have everything to the penny, from like everything from your HOA fees to your taxes, like everything. So it cannot even be off $11. And you had parked your car in my driveway because where were you, in Boston or something? I remember you were like on some trip. Yeah. And then like I was moving, I had like my closing got pushed. And so it was kind of like corresponding to, it was just a crazy time. Like nobody knew what to do. Like we didn't even get touched in Charlotte with the hurricane. Like I don't think my plastic plants in the backyard even blew down. Like it was like such a nothing experience for us. Yet you guys had torrential like rains. You had crazy flooding that wiped out half of, some towns. And it was just, people don't realize like how quickly things can change, like things can change in a week and a day.
That community, there's been such an upheaval and such a migration. You don't really have a sense of who, or you almost want to take a survey of who's moved as a result of the hurricane.
Yeah. For as many like natural disasters as we've had in this country, I mean, even just Kerrville a couple, weeks ago as of this recording in Texas, like you would think we would have better systems to predict and like better systems to, to track our migration. I mean, I guess that's the freedom of America, right? You don't get tracked where you're going and things, but I mean, that's the thing is that you don't know. Like, and I feel like if we had those numbers and that data, it would be better predictors of what could happen or should happen after a natural disaster. So hopefully they learned some really good lessons. Cause I mean, I think that, the town is going to be rebuilding, but it's in such a pocket within North Carolina that even getting materials there is not easy,
Yeah, that was a big part of what was happening, in those first few weeks. And that caused delays in getting emergency services there sooner because nobody knew which roads were open.
Right.
A lot of the bridges that if folks don't know this area of the country very well, it's nestled in the Blue Ridge and Appalachian Mountains. And so there are a lot of valleys and mountains, and the roads carved through the mountains, and a lot of rivers. And so what happened was the rivers rose, that the earth couldn't contain the amount of rain that we got in a short period of time. And so a lot of roads were washed away, and yeah, that caused a delay in trying to figure out how to get things to people. People were really resourceful. Some gathered logs and chainsaws and built bridges. Other people were bringing donkeys and horses with resources into towns. It was old school. So it was really amazing to see the resourcefulness of people activating in the moment of crisis.
So this is not funny at all, but it was kind of funny at the time. Saunders and so my friend Piper was coming in town, and I was like, we have to go to Asheville because it's beautiful. And what was the little town that we went to in the cabin when we had the Dateline experience?
Oh, yes. That was, I think, near Chimney Rock.
Yeah. It was Chimney Rock area.
And the Airbnb said Black Mountain. And so I thought, great, we're in Black Mountain. But it was actually at the edge. It was an hour away.
Yeah, it was so far. And we got out there, and I mean, the cabin itself, whoever the photographer was, they were spectacular photographers, because we got in there, we're like, okay, this is we're camping with a roof, and then we get out there. At one point in time, we hear Saunders and was it you? I think Piper went and took a nap, and it was you and I in the hot tub, right? When we heard the scream.
Oh, right. We were scared from the get-go. We were about.
It was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was like a Dateline episode. We we're sitting in the hot tub, and all of a sudden we hear this blood curdling scream, and we're like, oh my God. And then we're like, okay, well, we didn't hear anything else. So maybe no one got murdered. Maybe somebody just got scared or there was a spider. So we didn't know what to do. And then 5 minutes later, we hear what sounds like a bear, rumbling down the, whatever the mountainside thing that we were on. And we were like, do we go in the house? Is there a bear? And you grabbed a flashlight or something. You're like, let's go see. I'm like, I'm not going over there. What? No way, Jose. But you're like, let's do it. I mean, we didn't find anything, but we still don't know what happened. And we were like, we're just going to stay in the house.
Yeah, I think we thought about leaving, but it was late in the evening already.
Yeah, we couldn't get a hold of the landlords because there was something else that we couldn't. I don't know. There were no towels for us to take a shower after we took a hot tub. Those were all the towels. It was just a crappy. And I think they were for sale. And I don't know. It was just a funny experience because I talked it up. But I think that was one of the areas that got washed away during the floods. So I don't know. It just
It was. Yeah. A lot of those areas are still very much rebuilding.
Yeah.
Yeah. That whole restaurant and bar area that we went to along the river was washed away.
All washed away. Yeah. That was insane. It was just one of those moments when I saw it on the news that I was like, we were literally just there 6 months before. So it was just really sad.
Yeah. And I really feel for everybody had such empathy from Asheville to LA about what the sense of loss that the community might be experiencing, and together and to kind of get through and help each other out. So, have the privilege to go elsewhere, knowing that our weather systems are really changing and that communities are going to continue to be impacted. I'm in California now, and there's a fire in Central California at the moment that's quite big. And so acclimating to is strange to be acclimating to this as normal.
Yeah. But yeah, so speaking of that, like Asheville, for those that don't know, like people who live in Asheville are very, very proud to be Ashevilleonians. Like, I don't know what you call yourselves, but like that is an identity, especially when you live, like when you're in the mountains and you like, it's a lifestyle and it's an identity. And one of the like, just Saunders and I have had so many great conversations and I've been struggling. And I think, I've talked about it on the podcast and, 1 or 2 episodes ago. Just that, like, it was a really hard transition for me from North Carolina back to Chicago. Like I stopped in Indianapolis in the middle, like, and I ended up moving, straight back to Chicago after doing a city POC or proof of concept. If you haven't listened to the show before, a city proof of concept is where you go and spend 2 or 3 months to see if you want to stay in that city without committing and moving all of your stuff and all that stuff. But I moved all my stuff into storage and stayed in an apartment. And then I ended up moving back to Chicago. But it's like that. We were talking just about grieving your identity, your old identity, even though I didn't loved my house in Charlotte. I built it. It was gorgeous. I had a great neighborhood with great neighbors, but like I didn't have anybody else there. Like my friends and family were either in Chicago or Knoxville. So it was like after the last of the Mohicans all left, I was kind of there. I felt like by myself. I had 1 or 2 neighbors that I loved, but I wanted to be back in community with my people. And so, Saunders and I were talking about just how like you almost have to grieve your old identity, even if you're moving to something good. But like, as people from Asheville having to like move and uproot and go, north or wherever they went and lose that part of their identity, like that loss, one, your physical things when you're losing them. But even if someone was like a city person moving to the suburbs after they got married and had kids or something, like, can we talk a little bit, like as a psychotherapist, like what happens to our brains? Like, how do you grieve that loss and like pivot in a way that is healthy?
Talking about this and you thought, let's talk about this on the podcast. It's really, I have worked a lot with grief and loss in the psychotherapy space. You do the proof of concept, you're thinking about it for years, you really build in time, or if you get a new job somewhere and you have to move, or if you're impacted by a weather, disaster. No matter, I think, the time that you have to prepare, there's still a sense of transition that we go through. And our American culture, this is a broad statement, doesn't really make a lot of space to process those transitions.
Just even grieving in general.
Loss in general. And I would put forth that moving, it is a sense of loss of identity, some anticipatory grief as you're coming up to having moved. I know that I really had a case of, okay, we're doing this. And, might happen to somebody who is in a circumstance where they're outside of their community when the loss happens. And so like an inability to really have spaces where they can talk about it. You have to start right away. And so you don't have the time and space or the relationship.
I can see that too. One of the things that I've talked about in the past is the fact that like when you are moving, one, if it's not under good circumstances, like there's a piece of you that, when you get to that new place, like, do you really want to go out by yourself to like meetups and networking events? Because you're tired, you're in transition, you're grieving, people don't realize like that transition, it's sad, but your brain doesn't actually make that cutoff. Like you almost have to like say like, okay, here's my old life. Like I'm sad for it. It was great. Here's the pros and cons. It was awesome. And then here's my new life. And then like make that transition. And if you're not feeling good about yourself or like what's happened or how it went down or transpired, because like even in good moves, I have a friend that's in the process of a move right now and his movers kind of have taken advantage of him. And like, we went through all of the things we looked it up on the FMCSA and, there was like a variance in how much stuff he said he thought he was going to be able to get rid of and what he actually had. So it was like a $5,000 swing. So now all of a sudden, like he's got this adventure going with his kids on the way back to Illinois from California, but he's also dealing with the movers and like, trying to, $5,000 is a big swing, like when you're moving, when you're already paying like 16, 17 grand for moving, like that's a lot. And so like he feels like he's got like a bad taste in his mouth. So he's going to get to Illinois and be pissed, like, cause it just sucks. Like moving is so, so hard under the best circumstances. So like, I don't think people realize like it is grief and you have to process it. Like we were talking about this show, like I recently rehomed that like rejected me as a dog. Like I probably will talk more about this at some point, but like she was a rescue. She came from a tough situation and she really needed to be around people all the time. And even just me leaving to go to Pilates or leaving, like I started changing my habits. Like I felt like I couldn't even go to the grocery store because like I would come home 30 minutes later and she would be so worked up because she was so scared to be alone. To go from an overbreeding situation to a rescue that had 25, 26 dogs and then to be alone was super scary for her, even though she was 4 years old. And then for whatever reason, like I triggered kind of fear in her. And I'm like the dog whisperer. Every dog or cat loves me. Like I've very, very, very rarely, only one other time that I can think of, a dog hasn't like completely warmed to me. So it was heartbreaking, but she went to like the best possible situation. Like my friend and dog sitter, her parents have a Cavalier King Charles as well. And they would always play together when she would go, sit at Kelly's, and her parents fell in love with my dog. And, like I've seen them all together and they play and they, like their 11-year-old Cavalier has now is like got a new spark in life, and like that's what you want. And I use that example because not every good move is a good fit. But like if you can kind of figure out a way to like make the best of it, or like that was a crappy situation. Like I really thought I was getting, that I was going to have a dog. And I was like, I missed having that love and I got rejected. But it wasn't a good fit for me or for her. So I had to do what was best for the dog. So sometimes too, when you like get into these situations, like I know you really tried hard to stay in Nashville. Like there was a couple different apartments that you looked at and a couple different situations. And when it came down to it, like you ultimately had to make the decision to leave. Sometimes it's just not a good fit.
Sometimes it's not a good fit or it's not the right time. And I also want to posit, the therapist in me wants to say that moving is one of the like top 5 most stressful transitions. So I think having to kind of, as you talk about, figure out the place, figure out the cost.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of like a bit of the recovery and then the energy output needed if you have to in a new place to like build that community and get out there. And so it's an art of a transition. And I remember talking California, there was, I think, a migration of Californians in the pandemic to different areas. And, I had 5 people on my block who had also moved in the Bay Area. So we, were able to kind of like process in our different ways some of the transition. But I remember a friend and fellow therapist saying to me,
"Oh, that hits." Yeah.
Yeah. So there's almost like this personification of a boo and connected your own identity with. I wonder if for you, but for me, that transition, it was really challenging because I didn't realize how much of my personal identity was connected to being in San Francisco. Okay, it's a reorientation. And, I talk to my friends who are like lifelong New Yorkers or who moved there and in the world. And I can't imagine not being here. And then I think for the people who leave, it's hard to think about going back. But I also want to talk a bit about the neurochemistry that can happen too, because I will say this with a caveat, but I'm not a neuroscience and I'm not a doctor or medical expert. But what I do know is that there is very much a response in grief, and I would say in moving as well, from our brain. That the left side of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, is very the brain, and the right part of our brain is more the emotional processing. So in a move or in any kind of loss or transition, loss, and that can trigger hormones, that can trigger memories, the loss of a relationship from death or like a chosen ending. you sometimes reprocess old memories, and that's your brain adapting the story of the world as it was. And then you have the right side of the brain flooding the system with more emotion. So it's so important to say that something isn't there, or that grief isn't there, or sadness, or, if we can even set aside some time in our day, maybe it's not when you're walking into your 2 p.m. be together. And so just realizing that that's possibly happening within your nervous system, that thing time to, you may need more sleep. You may in space some time to sort through and try and reach out to that's comforting or supportive, and also just be aware that it takes time.
Yeah, it's funny. So I've spent all of that hits and all of that tracks with what I'm going through right now, because I feel like I went through kind of the 6-month funk, like everything. I moved back home and it was exciting and I got to see all my friends and family, and I'm not using a GPS anymore and all of those things. And then like 6-7 months in, I'm like, oh man, like I'm back home, and I'm, and now I'm like re-identifying as a Chicagoan, and I was going through all this stuff with Isabella, and my cousin and I share a therapist, and Sophie is her name, and she's amazing. And my cousin, Annie, that I share the therapist with, is literally going through a move right now, but she's going to be doing 2 moves in 3 months. She's building a house, but the people that were buying her house, like her house build is delayed, which, by the way, if you're ever building a house, just add 30% time to whatever they tell you it's going to be ready. And that's maybe going to be conservative. I've never heard that, like my build was like a month late, like, and that was like pretty much on time is what everybody said. So like just always add 3 months to your move. But so the people that were buying her house had to like register their kid for, for school, and like they had to get into the house. So she ended up having to move into a temporary house before she moves into the house in 2 months. But like Sophie was like, have you talked to Annie about what's going on? And I was like, no, like she's going through a move. Like she's got 5 kids and like a husband and all the like 2 dogs and parakeet and like a million bunnies. Like she's going through some stuff. I'm like, I can't burden her with my thing. But I think that's part of it, is that like you need to have a moving buddy. I always try to like tell somebody to like assign somebody, like, you've moved a lot. So like you could be my moving buddy because you know what it's like and what to expect. And like, you have that person that you assign and say like, hey, I'm going to be going through some shit. Can you just like, if I call you and I'm like, just like complaining or just need to sit in silence with you, can you just sit there with me? Because you don't sometimes know what you're processing or what's happening. You just know that you feel funky and it sucks. And you just want to feel that like my cousin, Becky, I helped her move. Like her movers came yesterday. Like she was moving from Iowa. Her daughter, Willow, is my goddaughter. I'm just getting baptized in a month or 2 weeks. I know. And, but she's got a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old and 2 dogs. And her husband is switching jobs. So he's trying to work through this whole thing. And we got to the house yesterday and like just the movers unpacked everything. It was a corporate relocation. So they were lucky enough to have these people come and unpack. But they unpacked everything out of the boxes and just left them in random rooms, so it's like you still have crap everywhere, and just even that transition of like trying to find a new place for all of your old stuff, like that part's the worst.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend this week who moved into a new apartment with her a few months now, and she said there's still, boxes in the kitchen, but they're not mine. But the grace period time to figure out what goes where. And so can we just have compassion for ourselves forward, if you have the bandwidth. And I will say one of the things I respected so much when I had to do that move in the first, one friend, said, I want your bandwidth to pay it forward to somebody. Like, how appreciative you would be if somebody showed up to like have a glass of wine with you while you unpack boxes. Is
just even open the boxes. Yeah. Like yesterday, my job, which I was very grateful for because it's like 95 degrees out and I was in the basement where it was very cold and air conditioned. But the mover has put all of her bins, like her Christmas, her Halloween. She's got a ridiculous amount of Christmas and Halloween stuff. Like Halloween is our favorite holiday. So they go overboard, or I would say underboard, because like you can never have enough Halloween. But she had so many, there were probably 30 bins, and the company had taped every single bin and labeled the bins, but not with what was actually in there. Like it was weird. So I went and I had to my dad ended up coming down and helping me, but we had to take all the tape off of all of these bins, first of all, which I don't know why they needed to tape them because they were closed bins with handles and everything, but that's a whole nother story. But there was one bin that had like random shoes in it, not even pairs of shoes, just random one single shoes. So I knew there was another bin somewhere with the other half of the shoes, ankle weights and Christmas stuff. And I'm like, so now I'm like sorting bins for her. And, like there's no way she could have gotten through those 30, but we had to move them out of the way of the water main because the water company was coming on Monday and they had to get into that room where the water gauge was. So like random things like that, like she is not one to ask for help, but like she definitely appreciated it.
Yes, exactly.
I had this thought when you were talking. I almost feel like moving is kind of like a riptide where like the ocean might look really, or the lake or whatever you're in might look really calm, but like there's this undercurrent that like it just feels like it's taking you under and everything else around you is like normal and static still, right? But this riptide, the riptide can grab you and just pull you under and you just have to float. Like you have to float through it. And
I think there's a moment, at least for me in this last move, where it's the sense of overwhelm, perhaps, of like, how am I going to get this all done? Again, being gentle with yourself along the way. And something that I also wanted to mention, that comes up, or kind of a fugue or a disorientation that might be. So lucky for you, you have created for your clients and audience members so many systems that people can refer to help them along. And maybe that needs to go on your calendar during the time when you're moving, because things fall through the cracks and you may not be thinking as clearly.
You're not in your routine. Yeah.
For myself, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to bring in other systems. Maybe I'll tweak this differently. So it's a learning process, but I remember downloading templates to remember. And it was a level of detail. I didn't need all of it, but the basics of what I did were really helpful. And that helped me not to spend time creating that myself.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that there's so much to be said for giving yourself some grace, but also understanding that it's going to be a tough time. Like the 3 months leading up to the move and then the like 6 to 12 months afterwards when you're unpacking and trying to, fit your round holes and square pegs. And I think that there's just a lot to be said for giving yourself that grace and like re-identifying if you're moving home or, changing, like grieving your old identity and like giving that space, but then also like figuring out who you are in the new space. I mean, I think people who move a lot can do that and adapt to that quicker than people who don't, but it's no less traumatic in my opinion. I feel like you just get over it quicker sometimes, but sometimes you like in my case, this was my 20th move in 24 years to, 6 of America's top cities. And even though I'm home and I am around my people, I'm still like coming to terms with the fact that my moving journey is done. I don't think that I'm going to make another move again, like a big cross country move. I think I want to settle in Chicago. And that's a whole new identity for me, like somebody who's rooted, that feels scarier than picking up and moving to a different state, believe it or not, and like figuring out who I am and being still. My nervous system is just very dysregulated right now, and I'm trying to get it back to balance. So I'm meditating every day and making sure I like make space for meditating either once or twice a day, which it's almost like I'm healing from surgery, and I'm giving myself, like, if I feel tired, I know that that's probably my nervous system saying like, hey, I need to slow down a bit. I'm still transitioning. I'm still, biologically trying to adapt. Just take a 20-minute nap, and that's been very helpful to not beat myself up for not being more productive, so I think that recognizing it, like you said, like knowing that this could be what is happening, you're not, that's sometimes when you just are aware of it, it helps to like deal with it.
Or why can't this change? Or it's like, oh, I've actually just been through a massive change. And I would imagine too that some material, so to speak, to revisit if one wants to re-identify with. And yes, the sleep part, giving your brain needs sleep. Like that is its rest, what is a very stressful experience in one's life.
Yeah, I think what the beauty of what you bring to the conversation, I think you also are an executive coach and you're going to be doing a big offering. And I think that too, a lot of people change jobs, right? So that's a whole different level. Like that's two identities that are being kind of thrown out in the wind. So I know that you have not got all the details ironed out yet, but I do want to give the audience a little teaser about kind of what you're going to be doing and your coaching and who would be a good fit for this, because I think that once you get your program up and running, which I think is pretty close, right, in the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. So I have, as Mariette is being so kind to mention now, I have been in the world as a therapist up to this point, and I've been doing some executive coaching for the past few years, and that involved with ICF. And so with that, my vision right now is to help support people who are moving through some kind of transition, reorienting to their values and taking a pause in a moment of transition so that it's an opportunity for more clarity and really taking advantage of intentionality, with making the most of that moment. So for folks who might be thinking of a career change, or if you're in a new role and you want to, bring in some of your learnings, but amend some of the challenges you had for this new role, think of me in terms of your thought partner in that journey.
I love that. Well, we will make sure that once you get all this up and running, we get it posted. Maybe we'll do a live on social media if I can figure out how that works. And we'll get you out to the group. But this has been an awesome conversation, long overdue. I know we've been talking about it for a while. And I have to say that this is Saunder's first time on a podcast. So you're no longer a podcast virgin. So woohoo! But thank you so much for coming on today. This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And folks can feel free to find me on LinkedIn, Saunders Moore, and send me a DM or a note, or THERAPIES.com to send me an email if you want to be in touch, and happy to set up an initial consult and see if we might be a good fit for some coaching services.
Yay! I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much.
That's a wrap on today's tips and tricks. Jump on decidingtomove.com to apply for a free on-air coaching session, or join the newsletter to get your copy of the Moving for Smarties workbook. Oh, and the legal stuff. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I'm a certified coach, not a licensed therapist, and this is not meant to replace the professional advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or real estate agent. I do not own a moving company or work for the governing agencies transporting home goods, which means Marriott's on the Move LLC is not responsible for anything that happens during your move. This is solely my perspective based on my research and my own experience and training. So, move at your own risk. Bye for now.